Today we have Brennan Agranoff in 3, 2, 1.
Hello, we're here today with Brennan Agranoff from Hoopswag. Can you just tell me a tiny bit before we start? What is Hoopswag?
Yeah, so Hoopswag is a company that I started when I was 13 years old. And all we do is we take, there's a lot to it, but pretty short story. We take like white socks, whether that's socks that we buy like Nike Elite socks, or it's our own brand of socks, which is what we mostly print now. But we just take white socks and do the printing process on them. So we add all sorts of colorful designs. We have like 700 or something plus different designs. And then we also, in the past year or two, have started doing socks where you can upload a picture of your face or your dog or something, and then we'll crop it out and print it on there.
So the main thing you do is design socks. Why did you choose socks, not shirts or anything else at the moment?
Sure. Yeah. So when I was younger, I grew up in Portland, Oregon. And so basically, because Nike's headquarters are here, everyone that I went to schools with, parents worked at Nike. And so we would all get Nike. You'd always see the kids at school with new Nike stuff before anywhere else. And so they started wearing these Nike Elite socks, which are like these $14 basketball socks. And they only had like 4 colors, which were like black, white, blue, and red. And I was that kid that always wore like colorful things, and I wanted something different. And so I ended up saving up all my money one summer and bought a pair of these things that I had found on like Instagram or eBay or something for like $40 that was colorful. And I was like in love with these things, and I wore them every day. And then my friends started asking for them, and I wanted more of them, but I knew they didn't actually cost $40. And so I started doing research into how do you actually print on socks. And from that point, I basically found the equipment I needed and all the sort of stuff that goes with that and the processes involved, and then found a dude locally who could make samples. So I got some samples made and then sold those on eBay, proved the concept that I could like make money doing this. And then to get my own equipment, I pretty much, like, it was expensive. So I put together an Excel spreadsheet, which I called like a business plan. And then went to my parents with that and was like, hey, here's this, and it's just going to take this long to make it back. Here's what I need, and so on.
And when you were getting the Nike socks, I would think that Nike socks, I'm not 100% sure because I'm the type of guy who just gets socks out of his drawer and just puts them on. But why did you aren't Nike socks have a lot of colors on them, or not really?
Yeah, so they normally do, but at the time in like 2013, 2014, these are stupid expensive socks too. Like, people either get it or don't, and I thought it was ridiculous at first. Like, they're $14 socks. It's just a pair of socks.
Like LeBron's, right?
Yeah, exactly. And it was just because it had the Nike swoosh on it, and it was, for whatever reason, it was all because of hype, right? Like, everybody else is wearing them, so then everybody else needs them. But they only had like 4 or 5 colors, and they couldn't do like textures on them. Like, it was just a solid color. Whereas like when we print them, you can print pictures, so it's like a million different colors you can print on them, and textures and that sort of thing.
And when you started like selling it everywhere, how did you find the places to sell?
Yeah, I didn't, honestly. Like, at first I had no idea what I was doing. I started just selling these things on eBay, quite honestly, because I had sold some other stuff on eBay when I was younger. It took me probably 3 or 4 months to be like, oh, maybe I should like make a website, which I did. I had no idea how to make a website, so it was a horrible website, but like, it existed. Um, and I figured out how to make a website, and then I slowly, like, we started selling on Amazon a couple years later, and then we started selling on Etsy and all these other places. We still do majority of our sales now through our website, but I didn't necessarily know what I was doing at first. It was just a lot of like testing. Like, instead of like asking too many, like, I feel like I was so naive at first that I didn't ask questions at all, which was almost better, because I know now, like, I get asked a lot. They're like, oh, where should I sell? Where should I sell this? Then that. And I'm like, I don't know, just go like test. Like, that's all I did, was go like test stuff and see what works.
I mean, when I went on your website, it actually looks pretty amazing. Did you get someone to redo it, like, and pay them like money to redo it?
Which site did you see?
I saw the one that said Hoop Swag, had a bunch of socks at the top. Then you went down and
Okay.
gave you selections of, like, if you want Christmas or if you want what type of socks. And I saw hamburger sock, which is interesting.
Yeah. So that site, so in high school, I started all this when I was like an 8th grader. So my freshman year of high school, I actually taught myself how to code through a coding class in high school. Um, and the platform that we use all of our sites on is Shopify. I don't know if you've ever heard of it, but it's like, makes it super easy to run e-commerce stores. And so most of that is pre-built, like, it's a template that you use. But in terms of like customizing it, like, I've done all that myself for the most part, just because it was very expensive to hire like people to code for you. Like, they're not cheap, and I didn't have that much money to do it, so I ended up just teaching myself to do it. But in terms of it looking pretty, a lot of that is like a template. I wish I could say I did that, but
So, and you're saying that you didn't code it, you used Shopify to find things to put on it. And you said you learned kind of how to set up the website. How did you learn how to set it up?
Trial and error. A lot of YouTube videos, and then screwing stuff up. Like I had 4 websites before this that just were horrible. And so every time I would screw one of those up, I'd learn. I'd be like, oh, you do this, you shouldn't do this. Maybe you should look into this to make it better. Like you pick up all these things that like you wouldn't have known you even need to know. The only way you do that is sort of by screwing it up, I guess.
And my question is, when you're talking about like doing things wrong, but I mean, your socks look amazing. Did you end up making bad socks that didn't sell very well before you were able to make all these amazing socks? Or did all these socks just come and then they started selling great right when you put them up on the market?
Yeah, no, it's definitely what you just said. It didn't go well at first. Like there were so many, I don't even know how many pairs of socks I have that are mistake socks. Like there's errors in the printing process. There's design flaws. There's so many different places that things can go wrong. Like I have probably thousands and thousands of messed up pairs of socks to date. And there was a lot of like innovation along the way in terms of like, okay, we can print this better. Here's a better way to print this. These colors are good. These aren't, that sort of thing. And also figuring out how to design them, because there's like 2 parts. You have to design them and you actually have to like make them. And when you design them, they just print out on paper. So like that's one part, like that's consistent. So you can print out anything. So the designing is its own thing, and then printing is another thing. But there are so many different ways that we've learned to like print these, because there's ways to like minimize your error rates and that sort of stuff. And so there's certainly there still is failure, I would argue now, especially like as we introduce new products and try to like make our printing stuff more efficient. It's still kind of a mess at times.
And with all the printing stuff at the start, I imagine you didn't make the socks with very good materials because it costs a lot to actually get. I see in the videos that you have these big things. How did you, first of all, how did you learn how to, I'm sorry, there's like 2 questions at once.
No, you're good.
How did you learn how to function with these machines? Because I see you getting these big machines, getting the paper on top and squishing them together. Mm-hmm. And then the sock would just come out perfectly aligned and everything. How did you learn how to do that?
So before, because it took like 3 weeks to get my equipment, I was so antsy at first. I pretty much every video I could find on YouTube about these machines. And so when they got here, I had researched how other people were making them, how the machines work, all that sort of stuff. And so I had a very good idea of how to use them. With that said, most of the videos that were recorded were like a year or 2 in. There isn't a lot those first 2 years. And so those first 2 years, there's a lot of errors, a lot more than are recorded. But most stuff you see on video is like, at that point in time, we'd gotten pretty good at making them. But certainly there's so many pieces, right? There's like, because you need a specific type of Teflon, it's called, on the bottom and the top so that the ink doesn't spread through. You have to figure out how to align the socks. They go on these things called jigs so that they don't, when you stretch them, there's no white lines. And then we started putting things on when we manufactured the white socks, we added black on the inside so that to your eyes, it looks like less of an optical illusion, that it's more color than there is. There's all these little things that we figured out along the way. And then to answer your question about the materials, so I launched my own brand of sock in like 2015, and the materials have stayed pretty consistent on those since then. And the Nike socks, I mean, we were buying like actual Nike socks from a store and then printing them. So they were actually good quality socks, which was good and bad, right? Like it was good because the socks were good, but it was bad because when we messed them up, you were out $10 every time. So there's pros and cons with all of that.
And since you have so many people, I noticed that you have all these people watching your site. I even kind of search it up and see how many people, like how many, amount of things, search things that there are about you. And I'm thinking, wow, that's really cool. How did you get your product well known? Did you like Instagram, or was it just like your friends that?
Yeah, I mean, it started with my friends for sure. I feel like that's sort of the way any great product starts, is you have an idea for something and develop it. And like, it's validated if people around you want it, right? And so that's certainly, I think, a big part of how it started. But for me, I started in 2013. So I definitely did a lot on Instagram back then, where I would send socks to dudes with like hundreds of pairs of shoes to take pictures with them, which was like influencer marketing before that was like actually called a thing. And then it was honestly just releasing new stuff. And it's been I've been doing this for 7 years. And so it's not like it was a super fast journey there. And so constantly working to like innovate on new stuff. And then in terms of getting it known, it was just, I focused more, instead of like getting mass amounts of people to know who I was, I focused on getting like a smaller group of people to really love what we do, which is what we have now. Like I would much rather have like 100 really, really good customers that know who we are and what we do and like are in line with that than like 2,000 people who just follow us on Instagram, you know? And so I think about 2 or 3 years ago, I kind of realized that was like, oh, the Instagram numbers don't matter that much because like at the end of the day, that doesn't equal sales. So in 2017 though, which is what you're probably seeing online, I did get an article written on me by CNN, which ended up on like the front page. So that was like a big press thing. We got all these articles written about us after that by every news site on the planet. And that was definitely a giant bump, but I couldn't have gotten there without building like a super strong base, I don't think.
And something I saw about you, this is so interesting. You're the one who designed your socks, right? And
Yes.
you're colorblind. So how do you do that?
Yeah, so I am colorblind. I had to get everything checked by people before I could release it. Like, I don't know what kind of colorblind I am. I mean, I've been tested for it, but I forget. It's like when the leaves fall in the fall, though, they all look like a blob of brown to me. Like, they don't look colorful. So, there's some designs that are just really disgusting that have never seen the light of day because I have to get them checked by people because they're just bad.
When I saw you on your site, like I saw this really artistic type of thing, and then you're putting the lines completely aligned, the white lines there, and I was like, wow, that's so cool. How do you do that? And with the designing, even through, like, I imagine after a while you got a hang of it. How did you learn originally to design? Was there anything you used?
I mean, so we do all of our designing. I have since day one in like Adobe Illustrator and Photoshop. And to be honest with you, I don't do as much of the designing anymore as I used to. Like the past year or so, I've sort of like handed that off a bit more. But I pretty much taught myself on YouTube and then trial and error. Like I think most of my education through my entire company has come through YouTube or like just Googling. It's incredible.
And well, is there anyone that, so now do you still make the socks by yourself, or do you have a whole amount of people that make the socks and you just manage the meetings, the influencing and all of that?
Yeah, so we have about 20 people year round that help do the manufacturing now. And then we do about 80% of our sales between Black Friday and Christmas. And so during that time, like last year, we got upwards of like 200 people. So there's a lot of people involved with the manufacturing. And then it's funny, both my parents actually work full time for the company now. And then there's probably another 50 to 100 people, depending on the time of year, that work for me online. So there's a lot of people involved to a point where like I focus more on like the growing the company and that sort of type things instead of the like day-to-day stuff.
It must be cool to say that your parents work for you.
It's funny. Yeah. I remember I get to say that like my senior year of high school, and that was my flex, was like, oh yeah, my parents work for me. Like,
And so right now, what are you planning to do next with the company?
we're moving a lot more into like customization, especially like as with this whole like COVID thing, like how we all been trapped at home. Like a lot of manufacturing is going to have to come back to the U.S., which is what we're sort of in the business of. We just only do it for ourselves right now. So moving into doing manufacturing for number one, other people, and then also like throwing in the sort of personalized manufacturing. So like you send us something and we're able to print it the next day.
Wow, that's pretty cool. And right now, I remember that you told me before that you make everything, and I saw on your site that you have a store where you sell things.
We did. I had a store in a mall for a bit. It didn't go very well, and so we didn't do that anymore. Yeah, it was.
Yeah,
not
because
good.
I'm like, it's hard. It's easier to get people online than on stores. I'm like thinking to myself, wow, he has this amount of sales. They say he's a big success, and he's selling in a store. It almost sounds impossible for clothing companies to do that.
It was very, very difficult. Yeah.
And I imagine you got most of your sales online, right?
Yeah. So we did it during Christmas one year, and I think we barely made enough money to pay back like the rent, let alone like the labor costs and all that stuff. But it was just like, and it was in one of the top malls in America, like highest paying, or I think they classified it as like dollars per square foot spent, and so it was in a very high paying area too. It just did not do well. So I don't know. I could have been doing something wrong too, but.
And so first of all, do you have any tips for anyone out there who's actually starting a company? Because I imagine for most kids right now, they're just sitting on their bed. Like imagine you were one day when you're like 12 or 11.
Yeah.
And you're just thinking to yourself, how can I start the company? What can I do? Because when kids look at you now, they see your sock thing, they see you with everything, and it looks amazing. So just give me a bit of background on that.
Yeah. I mean, in terms of when I was younger, so I've been selling stuff on eBay since I was like 7. Like I've always been trying stuff. But I think even if you're like 11 or however old you are, it really applies to any age. But like the ambition and like want to learn new things, I think drives more of like, I didn't start out to start a company. Like I set out to make these socks because I wanted more of them. And so that was something I was very passionate about. So I was like learning about something I was passionate about. And for me, that ended up turning into a company. But I see this even today, there's so many, like, if you're passionate about something and like genuinely want to learn more, because like it makes your mind happy to think about that, and it keeps your head thinking. There's so many different opportunities that end up opening doors for you. It's just a matter of like constantly actually like pushing yourself to do better, because like you said, it's very easy to just kind of like sit around and watch Netflix or whatever. But like there's something to be said for like wanting to push yourself, where a lot of other people won't go. So my biggest thing is like learning to learn. Like I know that I learn very effectively through YouTube and Googling things. And so like I can pick up on skills really fast. Like if I ever need to learn anything, that's exactly what I'm going to go do. And if it's not there, I'm going to go find it somewhere else.
I heard that there's some cause that you were donating a percentage of your profit to. What is that?
Yeah, so we work with a bunch of different charities, what we have in the past, and what we'll do is fundraisers with them. So like we'll put up a sock on our site with their thing, and then anything that's purchased along with like their coupon code, they get like 35% back on.
What made you want to start selling socks, or wanted to, like, did you have something in particular that was happening at the time that said, oh, I want to get socks for my team or something like that?
Oh, gotcha. Dude, to be real honest with you, this was probably very selfish, but again, I was 12 or 13. Like I just wanted more socks for myself. And so to realize that to get more socks for myself, I would have to sell socks to make money to pay for the socks for myself. That was literally the theory at first. Whether or not I wanted to admit it at the time, like that was the logical thinking behind it. Was like, how can I get more socks? And then I realized that like, holy cow, like people are really buying these things. Like this could actually turn into like, because I've been selling stuff for years and I never had anything sell as fast as these were. And so I was like, oh my gosh, like I might be onto something. And then I kind of kept pushing that envelope of like, why are they selling so much? Like, how can I actually make a decent amount of money off of this? And like, do I want to spend more time doing this?
And what I still don't understand completely is that you're right when you posted it, a lot of people at the start didn't come, right? It took time. And when they did, was it because you influenced very well? Was it because family, friends sold it, or just all together?
Yeah, so I sold a lot on eBay to start, honestly. Like I think most of my sales for the first year were on eBay. In terms of getting people on my website, it was very, very slow. Like it was getting people on an email list and sending emails. Like it was a lot of family and friends at first, for sure. And then I slowly like started advertising on Instagram, and like I would do giveaways on Instagram, like literally anything I could just get my name out there. But it was very, very slow at first. Like it was not a fast growth. Like I think I sold probably like $10,000 my first year.
When did you actually start like booming in the sock? Because did you start selling at trade shows, at events, at places like that, and then people just think, oh, I like this, can I?
Yeah. It's funny because I don't know that I ever had a moment where we went from like, wow, this like really big deal now. It was very slow in the sense. So like, I'll give you some context and numbers. So the first year I think we sold like $10,000 worth. The next year I think we sold like probably 80 or 90. The next year was like 170. The next year was like 250. The next year was like next year was $1 million, I think. And then the next year was like, so like that was a big jump. Yes, jumping from like 250 to $1 million, but it's 4x, right? And it's like that first year I was like, if going from 10,000 to like 90,000, that's like 9x. Like it really isn't. It was a smaller, like if you look at it like as a multiplier, it wasn't as big of a jump. Like it was, yes, numbers wise, $750,000 is a large jump, but only multiplying by 4 times was not as much as the previous years. Like obviously that is a lot of money, but you're not like, oh my gosh, like it felt normal growth, if that makes any sense.
When you say normal growth, I know you're trying to make this in a way make sense, but to me, what I don't understand is how can it feel normal to move from such a low 10,000 is it's a lot of money in my opinion, but for someone starting a company and wanting to make this big, I don't imagine. But then from moving to 10,000 to 90,000 and then jumping from 90,000 to $1 million, what do you mean that didn't feel like growth?
I think of it as like a snowball effect almost. So like you start with something small, but as it rolls, it gets bigger and bigger and bigger, right? And as it's getting bigger, it's harder to stop and it goes faster. And so it's like I kept doing the same things that I had been doing since day one. And obviously like I was innovating and doing new stuff. but it wasn't like I had changed anything crazy about the company. It was just like I had worked so long that I had grown a customer base, right? And when your customer base is 100, it's a lot easier to get to 200 than it was from 0 to 100.
These people share, right?
Exactly. Yeah. So the more people that know about you, it's like it's like compounding interest, right?
I see on your site that you have a lot of influencers on like faces or like the football teams faced on it. What do you mean by, are you influencing them, or like do they give you permission to put that on the sock? How does that work?
Some of the faces we do have rights to. There's some companies that we worked with that we have like logo rights to and that sort of thing. A lot of the colleges, we don't actually put logos on there. Those are just like their colors, which are totally like open source because they're literally just colors. But we have not done that much in the licensing space in terms of like working with massive influencers. Like everything we've done, we're very careful about design wise, like to be in line legally, because a lot of my competitors when I first started were doing stuff illegally and it came back to screw them over in a couple of years.
How would you say that it's not an easy job? When you got it, you thought it was easy, I imagine, but how would you say you feel about it now?
I took everything on like one thing at a time. So first I figured out how to print the socks on the equipment, and I was like, okay, I got this down. Now I'm going to figure out how I actually do good at like the designing part. And sometimes, yeah, there's multiple things that are at once, but you sort of learn how to do each thing individually. Like if you try to focus on this as one big picture, you're never going to get it done because there is a million things happening. You have to break it down and like focus on one small thing. So like maybe one day I'd be like, okay, I really need to get this before I can move forward at all. Like I have to get this design done. So I'm gonna learn how to do this design. Okay, great. Now I got that done. I need to figure out how to use the printer. Then I need to figure out how to make them. Like it was focusing on one single task at a time. And you get good at doing those things. And those single tasks, each time you do one, it like makes you a little bit smarter because you understand how to do it and how to learn how to do it. And so the next time you face a challenge, right, then you use the same sort of information or the same fundamental concept of like, here's how I'm going to approach this problem. Here's how I've approached it in the past to get through it. It gets easier the more you do it. And the more you do it, the faster you get at it. And then you start to realize there might be better ways to do it. And I know that sounds sort of like abstract, but a lot of what I've been successful at to date is like constantly improving and optimizing systems and that sort of thing, because really a company is just a big system. And so if you're able to improve little pieces of it as you go, the whole thing sort of gets better.
So at the time when you were saying little things, didn't it feel kind of slow because you're selling all these socks and you have to figure out how the printer works and you have to figure out all of these. How did you do it at the same time?
Yeah, at first it was certainly a bit overwhelming. It's still overwhelming now, it's just in different ways. But sometimes there's a bit of like, you just have to get this stuff done and it's going to get done one way or another.
And at the start, how did you afford the machines? Because I remember you saying to buy just Nike socks cost $40, which is a huge amount. I imagine to buy the machine that makes the $40 costs a lot more.
So the printing machines were like $3,000 though. And so I basically went to my parents and got a loan for that.
Okay. And I imagine, how did you get the loan? Did your parents just let you get the loan?
I mean, yes and no. Like I put together a pretty extensive like plan in terms of numbers. Here's how long it's going to take. Here's how much stuff costs. Here's where that money's going. Here's like how many you have to sell each week to make your money back. It took like 2 months, I think. But like I said, I've been selling stuff since I was like 7, and my parents had seen this. And so like, it wasn't like they were just giving $3,000 to a random kid. It was more so like this was the next step. And this was the first time where I couldn't get there on my own. Granted, if they didn't give me that money, I probably would have gone somewhere else and found it.
How can you create a plan what's going to happen if you don't understand everything that's going to happen? Like, you didn't understand the printer. You didn't understand how to design at the time. Or were you learning, or were you researching before you started the company?
It was a lot of research. And like I said, I had really done thorough research in terms of like watching every YouTube video out there, talking to people, guessing on or like to get cost estimates. I did thorough research, which is how I put those numbers together. And yeah, like it wasn't conclusive in terms of, I couldn't be 100% sure. Like there's always wrinkles in the process, but like there's also something to be said for not over planning and just doing, because you'll learn more by doing than you will by planning.
How does it feel to be a successful entrepreneur, be on CNN, having all these sales? How would you say it feels?
You know, it's interesting because like I don't necessarily see it as like, obviously it's a matter of perspective in my opinion, because like yes, it could be seen as very like successful, which I would argue yes, I've had success, but I still see myself as like just starting in terms of like there's still so much more that I can do to like grow. And so I mean, like it's cool to have resources like the company and that sort of thing to help me learn new things. Like I can learn things a lot faster now and try out new things a lot faster than I can now because of the resources that I have within the company. But I also still think like I'm like I don't see myself personally as successful because you end up surrounding yourself with people that are a lot smarter than you, and then that you like constantly keep pushing yourself. So it's funny because like, yes, I see how I appear successful, and I do see parts of that, but at the same time, I still see myself as very like, this is just the start.
You would say that if you're starting a company, the tip would be to focus on the step-by-step, not on the outcome that would happen.
Yes and no. That's a very good question, actually, because so yeah, you have your big picture, because there's definitely, you have to have big picture here too, right? Like you can't just think about step to step, but being able to translate this big picture idea and where you want this to go and breaking that down into actionable steps that you can take and track, I think is a piece that not a lot of people have been able to do, because the doing the dirty work, which is breaking that down and actually getting those steps done, it's not fun by any means, right? Like, but I also feel like you come to a point where if you do get through it, you're like, wow, like the fun part was actually going through that. But yeah, being able to translate this big picture idea and all these different things, focus on one thing at a time, knock that off, and know that you're headed in the direction of that bigger picture is like huge.
Okay. And I'm sorry for changing the question so much.
You're good.
Because that's pretty cool. But when I noticed also that you had a basketball team at the start, and you tell me it was like because of selfish reasons and all that, but at the time you were trying to get the socks you were making for your basketball team, right?
Yeah. So when I say it's selfish, I just mean it wasn't like I started to make a company. I started these because me and my friends wanted them. Like, and that was the goal, is like, how can we get the most amount of these socks as we can? But yeah, I did have a basketball team, and like, they're the sort of ones that when I first wore the super colorful ones, they were like, can I get these? Can I get these? Can I get these? And like, that's sort of what inspired me creating my own, I guess.
And so when you created them at the start, was it just you, or was it you and other people, your friends that were in the company? Because you make it sound that maybe someone else was helping you run this company too, right?
I actually considered it at the time, like asking other friends to be a part of it, but I never did, just because I sort of ended up doing my own thing. And I found that a lot of them didn't share the same interest. Like a lot of them would rather go like hang out with a bunch of friends all weekend, and I was like sitting at home working. And so like I was a little bit of an odd kid, but no, I mean, it was just me, but they certainly like had interest, and it was cool to have like, because I would go home and work on this company at night, and then I would go to school and I'd have these friends and basketball and that sort of thing. So I kind of balanced like the social stuff with the work thing.
And how did you balance it?
Like, oh boy, I could talk about this for a long time, but I mean, so like I went through all of high school. I got good grades in high school, which is always interesting to me because I have a lot of other young entrepreneur friends who all like have horrible grades or flunked out of high school, and I got very good grades in high school. For me, it was a matter of learning how to, I don't want to say manipulate the system, but like learning how to most effectively find your path through the system for your given outcome, right? So like my goal outcome was like, I want to get out of high school so I can work on this. With that said, I still like wanted the education of it. So I took the classes that maybe were educational, but didn't require like a stupid amount of homework. Cause there were some classes, that you can take that are just like, you're going to have hours and hours of homework every night. Like, or I would take classes where the homework, like didn't matter if you did it or not. Like, as long as you passed the test, you were good. I wish I had spent a little bit more time becoming a better at writing. I'm horrific at writing. I just can't do it. Like I got my grammar down, but like my just doesn't flow. Which is part of the reason I think I got through high school so easily, because I was taking these things and applying them in real world life, which is what most people don't see the connect on, right? Like that was the question I was always asking in high school. I was like, who cares? Like, I'm never going to use this. And as soon as I started using it, I was like, oh, like this makes a lot more sense. Like I'm more inclined to like understand this now. And so that, and then like, honestly, like I said, it was a lot of like working hard. Like I played soccer club and like through my high school, all through high school, I played high school basketball. Like I still had friends in high school. I tried to be relatively normal, but like a lot of this was like, I would come home at night and like really, I would focus on, I'd get home after like soccer practice or something. And I'd be like, okay, I have X amount of homework to get done. This has to get done by 5 a.m. or 6 a.m. or whenever I went to school. And I have to get this other work stuff done. And yeah, like the company did not grow as much while I was in school, but like I was sort of okay with that because that was more my priority was getting through school.
I mean, it must be cool to say like a friend asking for money. So, oh yeah, I just have $10,000 in my wallet. I just earned last year. So
it was always interesting because like, especially like all my friends are in college now, and you have this weird like thing where like I've been making money for a couple years and then they go into college debt and have no money. And like all these friends that I'm like totally on the same level with, except they can't, like, they've struggled affording like a meal, and it's just a weird little contrast that I face. And like, I'm by no means rich, like, don't get me wrong, I by no means like loaded, like all the money goes straight back into the company, but like I like, I've lived at home. I moved out like 2 months ago, actually, for the first time when I was like 20. But I like, I've lived very frugally in terms of like, I lived at home. I pretty much spent a lot of my time working versus like going out and spending all my money. Like, it's just the way that like I've sort of ended up living, but it's a very interesting contrast for me.
And do you enjoy working on the company? Because you say it's hard, and you say at the time you don't know that it's hard. But I mean, imagine if you enjoy it, it'll take like another 10 years to even want to sell it, right? Or are you...
We'll see. I do enjoy it though. I wouldn't do it if I didn't enjoy it at this point. Like I do genuinely enjoy working on it because it stimulates my sort of thinking and allows me to try new things and see what I'm interested in. But no, I would definitely say I genuinely enjoy it.
That's pretty cool. So, and at the start, when you were just starting off with the company, who gave you the idea? Was it just buying the socks off Nike?
It was really just like, I bought my own, that $40 pair that I originally bought was like, that's what inspired all of it, honestly.
And how did you figure out the materials for the pair? Did you search it up?
Yeah, it was a bunch of Googling. I talked to print shops, that sort of stuff. Like pretty much anyone I could talk to online or in person, I was just asking as many questions of as I could.
And you also mentioned that you took pictures or sent your socks to all these important people. What did you do? Did you email them, say, oh, can you take a picture of me and my sock and send it back, and I just put it on my website?
No, I was literally DMing people on Instagram. That was all I would do, is I'd just DM people and offer to send them socks.
Yeah, and how did you grow that following on Instagram?
It was a lot of sending those people socks, because then they'd post about it and tag you. Oh boy, I did giveaways a lot. I don't even know. There was a lot of, like, Instagram was a lot easier to grow on back then than it is now, but a lot of giveaways and like influencer stuff. Wait, so how old are you?
13.
Okay, nice.
So next year I'm going into high school, and I'm not sure how it's going to be, but I've heard awful things about it continuing from now.
Oh no, it's not that. People make it sound way worse than it is. I swear it's not that. Where do you live?
Santa Monica.
Okay, yeah, no, you're good. It's not that bad. High school people make it sound way, way worse than it is. I remember I was terrified, and then I was like, oh, like, this isn't that bad. It's actually entertaining. Like, I mean, what I took out of it, I would say I enjoyed it high school looking back. But it's not that bad. Like, the school part really in the long run is not that horrible.
At the time, did you consider when you were small, did you always want to start a company, or was this just like, did you just realize this one day?
No, I wouldn't say I had a dream to start a company at all. It was very natural in terms of like, it sort of just came.
When you started this and started getting like $10,000 in sales, which, trust me, it's a good amount in my opinion.
Yeah.
When did you realize you had to get a lawyer or had to get all these things? Because if you're so concerned about what can happen with liability, wouldn't you be concerned about protecting yourself if anything happened?
Yeah, I did kind of have to, like, I mean, again, a lot of this was research online, like, what is liability? What am I liable for? What am I not? You start to find that, like, if you form an LLC, they can only go after assets that are underneath the LLC. And so, like, a lot of my legal things, I did certainly talk to some legal people, but they're very expensive, right? Which is why I did a lot of the research on my own. And like, I really did most of that research. I definitely did talk to lawyers at some extent when I was younger about the design stuff and what I can and can't do. But I tried to stay away from it as much as I could just because it gets so expensive.
What's an LLC?
It stands for Limited Liability Corporation. It's just like there's different like kinds of businesses you can form. There's like a C Corp, an S Corp, an LLC, and they're used for different purposes. Like some of them are for like big corporations. Some of them are for like you, if it's just you that own the company. Some of them are like small business. Like there's just different use cases and they have different tax structures and that sort of thing. I've always been an LLC, but
thank you so much for joining me for this interview.